So to get started, I don't know if people have experience, having launched an iOS app. If anyone is part of the Apple Developer Program, if anyone has any experience in the world of iOS apps, the goal of the presentation today, I was pressed for a title, so I used the title A to Z for Considerations A to Z guide for indie developers. This probably goes till about G or H in terms of the world of indie development. If you want to go further than that, saying that there's a ton of ways to do it, but this is basically just the basics, and I want to give you an overview of what this app looks like and some of the things you need to be aware of before jumping into Xcode and getting started. Okay, let's roll. So what's the iOS platform? Is a platform that is obviously Apple uses for all its apps, whether it's tvOS, macOS, iOS. So Apple is very hermetic and kind of sealed off, at least compared to other other platforms I could think of, such as Android. However, people, it's often that people develop for cross-platform. But what I'm here to talk about today is what makes a developer specifically indie, right? So what makes a developer independent from what we would typically know as a FANG company per se, a later stage startup or what have you. So an early stage developer or indie developer is someone who relies heavily on open source code, is a contributor to open source, and does something called freelance. So freelance is often when you're working on, next. Freelance is when you work on projects on an individual basis rather than for an amount of time beyond whatever a freelance agreement. So a lot of indie developers, they work, they find that is the best way to publish their work and write code, and it's really I think it's something I've identified that's unique. There's a ton of companies that do open source anyways, but the indie developer often has several of their own apps, and I've found personally that the Apple platform makes it really easy to launch and run and have a profitable business running off of your own apps, just as an indie developer. So the tools of the trade, there are many, and it would not, I couldn't even name them in our screen is doing something strange. Anyways, I couldn't name them in the span of 90 minutes or even 60 minutes. That would be even more difficult. The main thing is if you are using a Mac right now, it's very easy to download a program called Xcode. The only way to develop apps for iPhone, iPad, tvOS, macOS, everything Apple, it all started in Xcode. So Xcode's now in version 11. The great thing with Xcode, I'm assuming none of you are super beginners. If someone is a beginner, don't be shy I noticed that there was another lecture on version control. So if all of these terms are new to you, you can direct questions towards the end or throughout, and I'm happy to address your questions as we go. So essentially, there's great frameworks to get started with, and frameworks are essentially a synonym would be. I mean, they're sort of like templates that allow you to get started and start building things with a running start. So some of the frameworks that are out there, you know, the ones that date back, you have core data, ones for geolocation. I mean, and then newer ones like Quora NFC, Quora ML, and ARKit, which is from the last few years, and we're going to get to. So there's also, there's several others. All of these frameworks, they kind of just make it easier to get on board with developing for iOS. So you always, the language you'll always be writing in if you're building iOS apps is Swift. You can also write in Objective-C, but that's sort of the deprecated language as of several years. Been deprecated over time, and most for iOS is written in Swift. So you want to start with a good dependency manager. I've been using CocoaPods for way too long. So CocoaPods is sort of outdated now that we're in 2020. But you could take your pick. There is a ton of these. All you have to do is you could Google the term Swift Dependence Manager, take your pick. And then you'll want version control, especially if you have collaborators, right, on an app. If you're not the only one writing code, if you are, I mean, if you have dependencies, other libraries whose code you're using, it's always best to use something like GitHub. There are other choices. That's just one that I've personally used and will try to use today. Essentially, iOS platform, I covered this in the first couple of slides, but it's getting up there. It's 13 years. It's been around for almost 13 years. It emerged at the same time as the iPhone, roughly speaking. And a lot of people are very fond of it. And a lot of people only develop for iOS. So regardless of what kind of developer you are, at some point you're going to think iOS, or you'll need someone who does. So it's definitely good to be cognizant of. Now, who is Josh? So a bit about. Slides were like always monotonous sometimes. You know, like there would just be a conversation. It would be difficult to kind of get into the content. So I'll give you just a brief background in a minute or two on myself. So I'm currently, I published my first iOS app in, I think, February 2014. I've been developing now, that's roughly 6 or 7 years. I started writing apps in Objective-C. Nowadays, I am CTO at this company, Caribou Kitchens. More on that. We're currently in stealth mode as of this summer, late this summer. And so I'll give you a quick background on me. So essentially, when I I know Stephen and I have spoken a little about how CJEP works. So right when I had finished CJEP, I had an opportunity to do an internship in Silicon Valley. I ended up spending, 2 summers essentially doing internships there. And then I decided that it's a whole other ball game, for lack of a better term, to be working there. So if any of you at all has questions about Silicon Valley, I make about 2 trips there a year. not during the COVID era. So I think the last one was January. Yeah, so about every 6 months, I still make trips there. However, it's quite the uncanny valley, and the way things grow and the way that trends really start in all types of software. So this is like iOS apps, all types of, anything that's new and exciting is starting there. There was a day where Uber didn't exist, where I had to take a ride to my offices in the Bay Area, and there was no Uber. We would use, Lyft was just starting, and then there was Uber, and it was like, all the things that exist today were centered in Silicon Valley, half a decade ago plus. So that's just a bit about me. That kind of was what I do. Now I'm based in Montreal, Canada. I've done a ton of freelance developer work, which I'm happy to share. I have an online portfolio, which I link to online as well at the end. Essentially, my main focus is my own apps, and this is in the last couple of years. Both, always. Okay. Thing I want to add. Okay, we'll get started. But one more thing I want to add is I listened to other workshops, and I just want to clarify why I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not a teacher. I'm not here to give not a 101 class, trying to give you the broad strokes to iOS, right? So again, if there's anything unclear, I don't know. I don't know what the best way, like when we start the live code, is there, how have you guys previously done the, have any of the workshops been interactive in terms of people saying where their progress is, what level they're at, that type of thing? Steven, is there anything, is it usually like an interactive thing, or am I just going to be lecturing? I'll take that as a continue lecturing, unless there's a chat. Wonderful. So we'll get acquainted with a few of the frameworks. I'll presume that most of you have heard about machine learning, artificial intelligence, these sort of big buzzwords. So Core ML, and then there's another one here. I'm going to send a link to the group of what they should look out for. Yes, I posted just to the general workshop. So this is an overview of some of the frameworks. The main ones, I don't know if most of you are, if you are games developers, you're developing games, you're going to want to know frameworks like Metal, several others. Kit, Metal performance shaders, Model.io, OpenGL. You can peruse. I included the file both in the table of contents. I just sent it in the chat for anyone to take a look at. So the main frameworks that you're going to want to know, I'm assuming some of you are JS, JavaScript developers. So JS Core makes it easy to port a lot of what you've done for the web. Also, WebView. That's another good one. Most of the classes you're going to build, I mean, there are entire apps you could build just using code that you've written in, JavaScript or for the web, and just porting it into iOS and getting creative with storyboards. I'm not going to show any particular examples. I mean, I could. There are news apps. They're a little dated. They're probably 4 or 5 years old. However, there are great examples of very, very rudimental apps. You know what? I should have started the lecture asking this question. Has anyone built and published an app as a independent developer or as just a member of the Apple Developer Program in the past? Any of you? Great. That's good there. Okay. Thank you, Melvin, for speaking up for the masses. I appreciate that. Okay. So I'm in the wrong. I'm in the wrong. Here. Okay. Workshop room. Figuring this out. Okay, workshop. Okay, great. Yeah, MIT has to. There are a ton of great classes that you could find online. Are we not? Are you not able to see the lecture slides? Like, so yeah, so a lot of you are familiar with the ways to get into it. I personally use this platform called Treehouse. So it's a paid platform. I used this a few years ago. They probably have the domain now, Treehouse. That's what you'll find in the. That might be the wrong domain, but that's what they were. So yeah, Team. There are a ton. There's free resources, and then there's platforms like Udemy. There's a ton of ways to get acquainted with a particular framework. So you can go ahead. You could just go on to a platform like Udemy. There's a ton of these online platforms, and you would just type in the search box, put in one of the frameworks. I could link you to that, but it's easier to just probably link you to developer documentation. I think that's just, yeah, I mean, I think it's just like documentation.apple. So I'm going to link you to that, a list of frameworks. And most of them are in that Medium piece. Some of them are out there. So, some of them I wouldn't bother checking out. Most of the ones that are updated for Xcode 11 I think it's up to iOS 13 now. Yeah, so the latest iOS. Those are the ones that you want to learn about. Some great ones, if you're doing anything with computer vision, again, Core ML. In one, there's Core Image. And then again, there are several others. So we're going to start with the foundation ones. Okay, so I've just linked you to some of the basic frameworks. You're going to want to go in like the first two categories. So under frameworks, if you're a game developer, go ahead and look through graphics and games. I mentioned a couple frameworks there. And these really get you a head start on anything you want to do. So I mean, I could give you an example of one of my first apps. This is a quick anecdote before we get started on some live coding with ARKit. So one of my first apps, so this was probably early 2015 or so, but it was just a chart to keep track of the price of Bitcoin. There was no reason why. I didn't really believe in the thing. It was more just I wanted to keep track of it. It seemed like a useful thing. I could charge 99 cents for it. I think that's what we charged. And anyways, it sold fairly well, which is funny. Should have invested it all in Bitcoin, all the proceeds, of course. However, that whole app I was able to build just off of, I mean, it was all Swift UI. That's how I was basically teaching myself Swift. And then there was like 3 other frameworks that they were all CocoaPods that we used. And yeah, it's the same thing as, those of you who are learning data science, right? So you have frameworks like NumPy and all, dozens of others. It's the same thing with iOS. Find ones that you're comfortable with and get started with them. I have more stories like that app. However, it's still there. I don't know if it's still works. I think it works on iOS version 9 and less, but it is still in the App Store. So let's get acquainted with few frameworks. It is a great framework for anyone who's very into, there's a term they used to use back in the day, self-quantification. Now we just call it wearables, right? So anything that tracks things like sleeping, things like movement, pedometers, so how many steps you're taking, or the like, right? You have SiriKit. So if you're writing an app and it's largely based on interaction with Siri, or you want some type of control flow that involves Siri, you need to work with SiriKit. These are more complicated ones. ARKit I like because Apple's been focused on it for about at least two, maybe 3 years now. And ARKit allows you to take all types of 3D renderings and place it over the UI camera, UI image, so anything captured by the smartphone or device camera. This is at this point, there's only a ton of cool demos. There's not a lot of very useful ARKit applications, so that's why I would say it's definitely a great time to learn about that. Again, ARKit is There's an app that this was just launched, I think, just about a year ago at the Worldwide Developer Conference. The app is called Reality Composer. Find that in the App Store, and it lets you pull in stuff like anything you've worked on in Unity or any other graphic software, Adobe, what have you. You can use that right away as a tool for building demos and testing out ARKit. So ARKit, I'm just a strong proponent of, the sole reason that it's a good way to experiment with your first app, and just getting started. It's definitely an exciting space. We're going to do something more simple. I want all downloaded the app that I specified, so FontCase. Manage your font type on iOS. So I just linked you to it again. It's also, I'm going to flip the slides. I'm going to try out FontCase, and I'm going to show you how a simple app, basically what it does is it allows you to adjust fonts. So this is something that was difficult to do prior. You needed to be not a calligraphy expert, but you needed to pull in a ton of font libraries and all types of stuff. I mean, you had a good dependency manager. It made it easier, but fonts are definitely easier. This app was just released, I think, over the weekend, right? Or maybe last week. So I wanted to show you something that is new. So FontCase, a lot of fun. Try it out. The code along would be too complicated. If we all pulled out GitHub or CodePen or one of these, what version control do people use? Like like it would have been complicated trying to get everyone. Okay. So yeah, I mean, most of their code is on Git, right? So if you search FontCase, you could see what's on Git. I mean, it's a lot easier for us to probably just keep it to discussion and lecture that way rather than jump on Gits. Okay, so moving forward. So let's give the app a go. It allows fonts to pull out my iPhone to try this out, but I tried this out right before. It allows you to change font type on and pretty simple. So you pull in a ton of fonts from seen elsewhere. This is really for the design geeks out there. People say they're all about design. Definitely encourage you to give the app a go and check out what they have published in the open source. This is a free app. Yeah, give it a try there and see what you think. Okay. Stuff. You have programmed for the backend before, so that could be using a tool. Tools like parse, Now I'm most familiar. Most backends I use are on Firebase. I don't like Firebase. Anyone? If I say like writing the backend, I mean anything. This chat. Thank you, Alex. You've been great, everyone participating with commentary. Super helpful. Okay. Yeah. So someone could also say logic. So it's a programming logic. Wait until everyone's had something to say. To say. So you have a lot of options for writing backend code. Yes, this is true also. Exactly. So data storage. Anytime you're writing software and something that needs to be reused, variable that's I mean, even like account, right? If you write an app and it has accounts and login information, you need user authentication. Right? So you can't do user authentication without building a backend. Firebase is a tool that I've used. There's a ton of third-party tools that do this. I'm going to just mention one. I find if you mention more than one, and everyone leaves everyone in limbo. So if there's any others that, thank you, Mr. Doge dude, for the commentary. If there's anything you have to say, any other framework or backend tools you've used, now is a good time. Something. Okay. So next up, first iOS app. How many of you have Xcode or have seen Xcode in the past? Is Xcode something that you plan to try it, at least give it a try? Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So the thing is with Xcode is initially what I recommend is you want to use so WebView, UI view, build a simple app off of something you've maybe a site you've put online already. Very basic. There's tutorials for it. A good one is Newsfeed, right? So if you so if you want to do like a newsfeed, there's a topic you're very interested in, you can make a JSON file, then update it to appear in, and you'd want to use create a class like NSList and make it appear. You can do it timestamp, you can do it by date. There are tutorials for this. If anyone's interested, I can send you the tutorial link. Okay, so to those that don't want to use Xcode, iOS becomes Xcode is the tool for using iOS apps. regardless of where you're building. I'm going to take a look at Firebase. Okay, so again, we'll jump back to the frameworks. So ARKit Reality Composer, in setting up this, I mean, since the last time I gave this talk was probably 6 months ago, I don't think Reality Composer was really existed then. So, you know, I just gave it a spin. It's a lot of fun for anyone who's into graphics. You could just, you know, place graphics over anything that your camera captures. It's super easy to build an initial app there. And this is more a few years ago. You know, this is not so much today, but you'll see demos of this stuff, and they seem to get a ton of interest. You know, people love AR apps. In general. So I would say, yeah, give that a look. For those who use wearables, again, HealthKit, that's a great framework. I would try that out. Another one that popped up is the Vision framework. So again, if this is a more advanced item, but if you're looking to apply things like, you know, high performance image analysis and computer vision techniques for face identification or other detecting features, classifying scenes in image and video. This is very important stuff, right? This is especially for things nowadays, right? Like you have COVID tracing. You know, they'll identify an infected, you know, someone who's infected via a video camera, and they're trying to trace where that person's gone. So all those types of things. These are advanced apps. This is not your first app. This, you know, that type of stuff. But the Vision framework, right? That's something I would check out right away. Anyone who's into NFC, you know, people who use, anytime you use a fob key, I mean, here's an idea for now. Anytime you use a fob key, the cost to produce that fob key is it's immense compared to some of the options and technology you'll find out there, right? Like Core NFC. So the Core NFC framework, it allows you to essentially you're encrypting information that's stored and only shared when the device is placed in contact, near field contact with some type of reader device. So it's the same thing you'll see with chip and pin technology. But essentially, any smartphone from any recent smartphone will have some type of baked into it. Actually, Android is better with that. Android, developing for Android is better if you're developing an NFC app. So that's near field communication. iOS is still there's still a lot you can do. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy to chat more if someone has any questions on a framework like Core NFC. I mean, there's a ton of others, right? There's ClassKit for educational apps, File Provider. There are tons of apps out there. So once you have built an app that you think is ready for the App Store, and the App Store has, I don't want to call them stringent requirements. Get to that after, what to do once you've built an app. As you're building your first app, you want to be staying up to date on obviously new frameworks. That's what we discussed. There are simpler ways to build apps than just going into Xcode and writing code in Swift. There's React Native, you know, so that's one of Facebook's tool. Google's tool is Flutter. And I had put Firebase in there, but never mind that. Essentially, the most important things to know are staying up to date. It's just as important as updating your OS, you know, the OS on your computer, right? Always want to stay up to date, and the best way to do so is developers often go to events, WWDC is online this year. I think it's, I don't know how the entry works. It's, I believe, like it's sometime next week. So that's the Worldwide Developer Conference. Ton of fun, even if it's online. It's probably fun too. So yeah, you want to keep the signal to developer communities, right? They're everywhere. And really the core of developer communities are, they're found on places like Reddit, obviously. I mean, there's other places too, right? The vetted news sources are places like MacRumors, places like TechCrunch. The Twitter sphere, there's unvetted communities, but there is great information there nonetheless. And it's a great place to meet collaborators. If you have an idea for an app, meeting the right people to work on it with you. Yeah, I would say 100% that staying close to developer communities is very important in your initial days as any type of developer. Also, OSS. OSS is surprisingly the people you would meet just through OSS world, open source software. Some of the best developers you will meet in your early developing careers. Okay. So open source software. So open source software is essentially anything that's available online under some type of license. So you'll have a license like the MIT license, fair use license. There are tools to determine what type of license you need to comply with, right? So what I'd say with open source is don't use it sparingly. And most developers that contribute to open source, they're happy to talk about it, happy to direct you to libraries that they know of or that they've used themselves in their apps. Has anyone? Oh, someone. Okay, you asked me about Firebase. It's its own topic. It's its own topic. It's honestly with any developer, if you get them talking about something they've spent a lot of time looking at and seeing like anytime you have a ton of users and are crashing, you don't endorse that thing anymore. So yeah, that's a summary of why I don't like Firebase. But back to open source, that's a topic that's really exciting and interesting, and there's often new and exciting things happening in open source all the time. GitHub does have this thing called Hacktoberfest. I'm not sure. I didn't watch the full GitHub lecture. I mean, this is like months away. I don't know if they'll do it or if they did it last year. And they'll send you like the typical tag, like the laptop stickers and the T-shirts and what have you, for making your first contributions to open source software. So if any of you have launched apps before, done any code before, probably some of it's useful to another developer out there. So what I would definitely suggest is the world of OSS, places like Hacktoberfest, and or events like Hacktoberfest, and making your first pushes to on GitHub, other people can see and use. Now we're going to talk about once you actually have an app. This is where I get excited. So once the app is in the App Store, first of all, there are requirements for what Apple will accept as a basic app. It doesn't have to be so original. You can take another app and clone it. In fact, a lot of tutorials do that, right? There's a dozen tutorials that will make they'll make a cloned Uber, or they'll make a cloned Snapchat, or they'll make a cloned a dating app that starts with T. But they're they'll clone some app, and what they'll do is encourage anyone watching the classes to copy that app, and they'll walk you through that. There's nothing wrong with having one of your first apps be a clone of another app. I'd encourage it if it gets you approved in the App Store sooner. So once you have an app that is approved, paid promotion is a great option. You could do all types of things like search ads. You could do all types of things like search ads and types of other promotion. Now, app purchases, there is a way to do that. That's not the scope of kind of what I wanted to cover today. Yeah, I mean, once you have an app, it makes it Xcode simplifies the process, adding in app purchases or just putting a price on the app. I'm a big fan of doing a paid version and then a free version. So if someone really finds value from using your app, they'll go ahead and paid version. There's also great ways to link to your other apps in your apps. Not necessarily like run a promotion, but you could do like buy the same developer. App Store also lets you do bundling of apps. Launch 3 apps at the same time and bundle them, for one price. That's a great idea. We'll suggest as a reference, there's a book. The author's name is Chad Moretta. The book is called App Empire. Very non-technical approach. For the technical side, you probably want to go with like an O'Reilly textbook. That will be your indispensable tool, at least early on, when you're discovering all the things you could build with iOS. App Empire is a bit outdated. I think it's a good entry point for the indie developer, just to understand how exciting the world of independent developing is, and all the things that are done in that world. That's a great book. I mean, I'm happy if there's anyone who wants to ask me for other suggestions of resources online, free tutorials, or other reference books. Happy to make a suggestion as well. So this came from one of my friends in Silicon Valley, and it's basically, it's never too early to monetize an app, and it always makes sense. You're always undercharged. It always makes sense to charge for at least one version of the app. To make 2 versions, charge for one, because you're always charging too little when it comes to your, not necessarily your first app, but when you're publishing several apps, you always want to price correctly. And again, search ads are very good. If this is something that I haven't played around a ton with, but you are able to target based on search terms, similar to what you can do using see this all on every platform, right? You could target using on search ads. It's not demographically. It has to do with search terms, sort of like AdWords for running Google ads, but App Store ads are a great way. Honestly, if you launch your first app, I would take a nominal amount of money, $100 or $100, and that just running ads and seeing what kind of response you get. Right, make it really easy for contact it, or if you're setting the menu on your app, you could give an option to for contact with feedback or what have you, and get some early feedback on your app. Get other developers using it. You often will get great feedback from other developers as well. So I strongly suggest at least allocate some plan budget or promotion of the first app. Other thing I want to add is there's nothing wrong with if you find the right collaborator in your immediate circle. The best way to do it is to build it yourself, ship it yourself. If you're not able to, there's nothing wrong with there's a ton of. You want to go to community events. You want to meet other developers. That's the second best option, but there's nothing wrong with looking for hiring online. There's a ton of great agencies. There's a ton of great outsourcing places. That's another topic in itself. The best way to launch, especially your initial apps, are follow along a few tutorials, especially the cloning tutorials. My favorite, because I would end the day with an app. It maybe 60%, 70% of the code I had written versus copy and pasted from the tutorial. However, you would end the day with a running app that you can test out, and you can put on something like test flight. So how many of you know what test flight is? Same. Okay. Has anyone ever sent you a beta download link? Other ways to send data. There used to be one called Hockey App. There used to be another way. There was a ton of apps like TestFlight. You could even do it through the browser. I think Apple stopped letting you do that. You could do that mainly on Android. You would give someone a browser link and it would download directly. Test version. Anyways, these are just test versions. Want to test many versions of the app. The best way to do that is to send an initial test flight link to other developers. I test out 2-3 of these every week. And a lot of them I'll find myself. I'll find them on Twitter, or I'll find them. There will be a post in my wider network, LinkedIn, Facebook, what have you. Someone's testing out a new app. People to try it. So there's a ton of great ones. Some of them aren't great, and I delete them off my phone. But basically, once you have an app, you want people to test it out, and then as soon as it's in the App Store, I'm a strong proponent of just to repeat, allocating some type of budget for promotion. That being said, I'm going to bring this to a close, see if there's any questions, any comments on general topic. Kept this general today. I'm waiting to see how this is usually done. But all that being said, I want to say thank you for watching my workshop. Don't hesitate to tweet or reach out anytime. If you're working on something, I'm always happy to test it out. Always happy to offer feedback, advice. Amazing what you can do just asking someone for a little advice, actually. In fact, like a lot of the opportunities and even freelance contracts that I've gotten just came from, inquiring, asking advice, asking someone what they're working on lately. So I'm always happy to hear what any of you are working on. Yeah, I mean, on any platform as well. Right? Like if you're most comfortable, if you want to develop, you're developing React Native app for Android, you could talk. Happy to for some feedback. That could be helpful. Always happy to any other developers out there, especially if you're submitting code to the open source, because that's the whole, like, indie developers are the whole ecosystem is supported by open source contributions, and people who are giving both feedback and writing code occasionally, as good Samaritans, right? Like just to support other people's projects and just push really what's out there. So yeah, you can find a ton of great. I mean, most of the information on frameworks, you're going to find that in the documentation. So you're going to want to look in documentation, and everything else. Don't hesitate to talk to developer friends and reach out. Reaching out, it goes miles. It goes miles. So all that being said, I'm going to open up the floor for the last 10, 15 or so. If there's any feedback, questions, hate mail, comments. I say comments. Was this helpful to anyone? Don't all type at the same time. Awesome. There's one person, that's even good enough, to meet great developers, it's not easy. Developers are a bashful, lack of a better word, secluded, bashful bunch, right? You often, whenever I think of the developer, I think of I don't even know if this reference is relevant. It's there's an episode of South Park where they're all obsessed with World of Warcraft, and sometimes I think developers are, they're all in their own bubbles. Sometimes it's best, to reach out, just open the channel of communication. So I think events like this, I think platforms like Curious, what Stephen and Lewis are up to. I think that's great. I think that the more developers talk about, their open source struggles just at getting started, just to getting their first apps out there. Cool. So I mean, you definitely, like, the developer community Do you find that your developer friends don't share what they're working on as much as you'd like them to? I mean, what I find, do you find that? Have you, as developers yourselves, or as developers yourselves, or those who plan to go into a field like software, how many of you find finding collaborators is a challenge? Or just have questions for 10 more minutes. At most. Then Stephen, does anyone want to step in with commentary on their apps, their learning process? What's been most helpful? Just do this talk again. Because the live code was something I always hated when I do when I studied. Live code was possible to follow. I would have to review it afterwards. I like the broad strokes approach, and if there's something of interest, so like, Alex mentioned that he's making games. Is he, or is this platform specific? Oh, yikes. Ask me what language I program my apps in. Mainly Swift, originally Objective-C. It's a few years now since I coded in Objective-C. It asked me about graphical user interface. With iOS, most GUI elements can set up using storyboard or a lot of the class elements that it's basically drag and drop. That's why I like Xcode. There's a lot of drag and drop. It's a big trend now. I don't know if you ever heard of the no-code tools. So there's a ton of these that are available. I've seen a few of them. I mean, like, I saw in the chat, right? Like, you guys were looking at Flutter. A lot of like the UI toolkits, a lot of the initial stuff to get basics of an app, right? Like we could call it the architecture or the scaffolding, to use a programming term, right? So to do a lot of that, there are no-code tools I can suggest. I've had a look around at Flutter. So it's like, I would say pick either Flutter or React. Really go. There's a million things you could do with either one of them. But what I would recommend to yikes, I would say give Xcode a go. A lot of the graphical elements, you're gonna like you're gonna go to the dot storyboard. Oh, okay. Well, what can I say? If you're an Android user and don't get an iPhone, you can still develop with the React. You can still, there's still a ton of tools you can use. You know, I don't have, you know, I can't tell you too much. As a if you're an Android guy, however, what I can is, you know, it's always where if you can find a Mac, you know, take a look at Xcode, see what you think of it. And I mean, you never know. I mean, it's like no one woke up suddenly as a great Xcode developer. It took, you know, years of practice and persistence. So if you're an Android, use a ton of good IDEs, good. I mean, it's not my focus, more forte. So everyone's mic is off. The last 5 minutes, do you want to tell me, does anyone want to open up the floor, share what they're working on? I like your handle. Let's see, Doge Dude is typing. I just want to make this, you know, I want to make this collaborative. Chat moderation. Okay. Okay. What type of chats, right? Are we talking like instant message, like Facebook chat, or for platforms like Discord, Twitch? That's another one. Okay. Okay. Are you doing like a bot or I mean, like what's so is that a swear word? I mean, chatbots, I think, have gone through the hype cycle. I'll introduce you guys to a new concept. Gartner's hype cycle. Even Gartner's, I mean, just to make sure. I didn't want to give you like the wrong name. Yeah, just check out the Wikipedia article on that. I mean, I could have given it like some famous mathematician's name, like so like the Leibniz hype cycle, or I could, you know, but I wouldn't do that. It was Gartner. I'll give credit where it's due. Yeah, so I think that the chatbot, I think chatbots in the enterprise, right? Like for businesses, there was a huge use case. A ton of chatbots. Build them, right? I mean, governments censor all the time. They'll censor corporations, they'll censor individuals. So, you know, if you're building a chatbot that detects whatever you meant by a bad word or whatever swear word, I'm not sure what you're getting at. But that's definitely that's a great idea. Yeah, I mean, there's you could also, I would suggest checking the messenger, like Facebook's messenger. So check out the messenger docs. There's a ton of stuff, I think I mean, nowadays you'll find tools that let you build some. I can't recommend. If you read Face of the Messenger docs, I think this. I'm not sure. Not sure. I think we're pretty much wrapped up. If anyone has a question on independent developers not related to iOS, we could spend a few minutes on that just to wrap up the session.